You're watching UATV News. My name is Inna Kosinska. Good evening. Ukraine celebrates anniversary of its independence. Top officials, distinguished foreign guests and thousands of spectators have arrived in Kyiv Independence Square to watch the celebrations. At the heart of the event was a military parade. Before it, President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky delivered a speech noting that the country is at last restoring its independence and regaining what belongs to it. More details in the following report.
The closed for traffic Khreshchatyk Street, thousands of spectators, festive orchestra and soldiers lined up in a column. In Kyiv, everything was prepared for the festive parade and celebration of the 30th anniversary of Ukraine's independence. Guests of honor are coming to the Maidan. Presidents of Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, Latvia, the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrives at 10 o'clock in the morning. The national flag is raised over the Maidan. The celebrations begin with the speech of the President of Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky emphasizes that Ukraine is a young 30-year-old state with a 1,000-year history and culture, and stresses that we are not visitors here. We are a young family from the famous dynasty of Kievan Rus, Ukraine.
After all, our history and our state are unique. Our constitution is 25 years old, but our another constitution is 311 years old. Written by Philip Orlik, it is finally at home and everyone can see it in St. Sophia Cathedral, built more than 1,000 years ago. Our currency, hryvnia, is a quarter of a century old and it depicts in particular Prince Volodymyr. But our hryvnia is more than a millennium old. It existed under Prince Volodymyr. Our trident was approved in the Constitution of Ukraine 25 years ago, and our trident was embossed on the plinth bricks of the Tied Church 1,025 years ago.
Volodymyr Zelensky has also introduced a new holiday, the Day of Ukrainian Statehood, signing a decree. After the president delivered the speech, the solemn part begins. It started with a theatrical performance. According to the director's idea, it shows the most significant and tragic pages of our 1,000-year history. A little girl who passes through scenes of historical events from the founding of Kievan Rus to the present day plays Ukraine. The performance leaves no one indifferent. The column begins to move and blue and yellow flag is carried along the Khreshchatyk Street. The first in the column are veterans of the anti-terrorist operation and the operation of the joint forces. Behind them are cadets of a military school, representatives of all branches of the armed forces, tankers, pilots, sailors, signalmen, special forces servicemen and others. The parade was attended by servicemen of partner countries and allies of Ukraine. These are the United Kingdom, Georgia, Denmark, Estonia, Canada, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, Slovakia, Finland, the Czech Republic, Sweden and the United States. Aircraft fly in the sky over Khreshchatyk Street, modern helicopters and planes, fighters, bombers, transport and rescue aircrafts. The column is closed by the largest plane in the world, Antonov 225 Mriya. Military equipment and modern weapons appear on Khreshchatyk. Among them are the latest developments in the defense industry: armored personnel carriers, infantry fighting vehicles, 2 tanks, Bulat and Oplot, Bastion and Vilha missile systems, as well as Neptune cruise missiles. The parade on Khreshchatyk is closed by a group of MiG-29 fighters drawing a Ukrainian flag in the sky over Kyiv. At the end of the parade in the center of Kyiv, the action is transferred to the Dnipro River. For the first time in the years of independence, a river parade of military and border boats was held there. Police, rescuers, civil boats and yachts followed the Dnipro, being accompanied by ships and aircraft. The spectators were also shown the work of special troops on water and land, an operation to rescue a burning boat. Ukrainians were also impressed with the landing of airborne troops by water and air.
Very cool, very interesting. I remember parachuting as well as shooting. It was very interesting. I was struck that events are shown not only on land but also on water on the Dnipro River. It's impressive and exciting. I think that all citizens today have something to be proud of.
More than 5,000 military men from Ukraine and abroad, about 100 aircraft and 400 units of military equipment and weapons took part in the celebrations, dedicated to the 30th anniversary of Ukraine's independence. Reported by Vadim Kramer, Inna Kosinska, Valery Bakus and Vlada Tsurkan, UATV News.
The entire country marks the anniversary of its independence, from east to west, from north to south. Ukrainians all across the country celebrate in the streets of cities and towns in spite of sometimes even bad weather. Our correspondents from the regions will tell you more.
In honor of the 30th anniversary of Ukraine's independence, a military parade is held not only in Kyiv but also in Odessa. In the program of the celebration were the flight of naval aircraft together with Air Force of Armed Forces demonstration of aerobic figures and light civil aircraft, the passage of ships and boats of partner countries.
I like the largest ships and aircraft which add excitement to the sum, and I like the valleys too.
Everything is great. Everything and the orchestra and ships, especially planes. It unites the people, unites the country, unites Ukraine.
A large-scale flash mob, theatrical performance and concert of famous Ukrainian performers. In Mariupol, in eastern Ukraine, a citywide flash mob Ukraine 30 was held on Freedom Square. More than 600 people participated in it. Two orchestras were playing there, children were dancing synchronously, rock bands and pop singers sang Ukrainian songs.
Oh, what is independence for us? Well, independence is freedom, what Ukraine is. This is Ukraine for which we are warring, so that everything is fine with it.
Independence is, of course, the feature of a country that says that it is full-fledged and has developed as an international institution. That is worldwide recognition, and in fact the existence and control of the fate of its inhabitants and neighbors in full measure. Anyway, it's like a person who got a passport.
The rainy weather did not stop residents of Lviv, who are also celebrating the Day of Independence. The city held the March of Unconquered. The participants of the procession passed from the Lychakiv cemetery to the memorial of the heroes of the Heavenly Hundred. The race in Vyshyvankas, Ukrainian national embroidered shirts, was also held.
We are happy with the fact that together with other Ukrainians, you feel you belong to the same nation.
This country is dear to me because I was born and raised in it and have already lived here for 25 years. I love the people who live here. I love the city and everything that surrounds me. That is why this day is important for me, and I came here even in rainy weather.
In Kherson, the celebration of Ukraine's Independence Day began with a prayer and a solemn procession. Representatives of various denominations, public organizations, volunteers and officials gathered in the Alley of Heroes of Independent Ukraine to pray together for Ukraine.
First of all, independence is something that is presented to the homeland, country, state and every person.
For me, the word independence means to freely express my thoughts, live in a free state, be not afraid to express myself, and in general, to live.
Also, the book of authors of the Kherson region with Ukraine in the heart was presented in the city. This is a collection of poems, including those dedicated to Ukraine. Reported by Roman Smoler, UATV News.
Ukraine accepts congratulations on its Independence Day from different parts of the world. What do they wish our country? See the report.
Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz was one of the first world leaders to congratulate Ukraine on Independence Day.
I'm glad to greet you on the 30th anniversary of Ukraine's independence. Ukraine has a great history, especially in recent years in Kyiv and other cities of the country. A lot has been done to modernize the state, reforms, so that Ukraine moves in the right direction.
Democratic, prosperous and secure Ukraine meets the interests of not only the Ukrainian people but also the United States and the international community, said U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in his congratulation message.
We will continue to support you in your efforts to achieve your Euro-Atlantic aspirations, to restore and secure Ukraine's internationally recognized borders and to defend against Russia's aggression. Your current reform efforts are key to meeting these goals, and we remain your close partner as you work to advance anti-corruption efforts, promote economic growth and fulfill the promise of the revolution of dignity. The United States is committed to strengthening our relationship with Ukraine as we work together to build a prosperous future for all Ukrainians. Congratulations on 30 years of independence.
The head of the EU delegation to Ukraine, Matti Maasikas, called Ukraine a priority partner of the European Union.
Since the first days of independence, the European Union was staying along with Ukraine and its people. Together with you, we have witnessed significant successes in the development of the country that have been achieved during this time. As there is no Europe without Ukraine, so there is no safe Europe without the independent and secure Ukraine. The European Union is and will always be the largest and most reliable partner of Ukraine.
Ukraine inspires by its example. This was stated by the ambassador of the Netherlands to our country, recalling Ukraine's way to independence.
I would like to wish you strength, aspiration, confidence and faith in your constant struggle for freedom and development. We expect that the occupied territories return to Ukraine and the constitutional rights and freedoms of their inhabitants will be restored. Glory to Ukraine.
Scientists of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine, who are now at the Academician Vernadsky Station in Antarctica, also congratulated their country on Independence Day.
We, 12 participants of the 26th Ukrainian Antarctic expedition, being at the scientific station Academician Vernadsky, 15,000 kilometers from home, congratulate our native country from the farthest corner of the earth, where our national flag is flying. Despite the fact that we are fascinated by the beauty and grandeur of Antarctica, our hearts beat in unison with the hearts of all Ukrainians.
Actors of the Kyiv Ivan Franko National Academic Drama Theatre congratulated Ukrainians with a song. They sang a little-known version of the Ukrainian anthem and sang it on the island of Hortytsa in Zaporizhia. Meanwhile, Google has presented a new doodle for the Independence Day of Ukraine. It depicts a Cossack Chaika boat decorated with the Ukrainian coat of arms. Reported by Vadim Kramer and Ksenia Buhai, UATV News.
30 years ago, on August 24, 1991, the MPs of the Parliament of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic adopted the Act of Proclamation of Independence of Ukraine. Immediately after that, the national flag was brought into the Parliament Hall and the country entered a new stage in its history. However, this event was preceded by years of political struggle. My colleagues will tell you more about the decisive moments that made our country independent.
The generation of Ukrainian artists of the so-called executed Renaissance in the 1930s and Soviet dissidents in 1970s, all of them fought for the independence of Ukraine, resisting the pressure of the Soviet regime. The independence movement became truly massive after 1985, when the glasnost era and shock after the Chernobyl accident defined the public opinion.
Є така теза від Чорнобиля до незалежності.
There is a thesis from Chernobyl to independence. The Chernobyl disaster had a very serious impact on the activity of Ukrainian society and on the activity of Belarusian society, by the way. Another important factor to mention is the return of political prisoners from camps. They became to some extent a kind of accelerator for the process that took place in the Soviet Union at that time.
Given the public discontent in 1989, representatives of the so-called democratic forces have made up almost a third of the new convocation of parliament after the first alternative elections in Ukrainian SSR. A year later, in July of 1990, thanks to them, the parliament adopted the first fundamental document of Ukrainian independence, the Declaration of State Sovereignty.
The communist majority was persuaded to vote for due to their internal split.
We have managed to make big claims against the communists. We said, look what a fateful document there is, the Declaration of the Sovereignty of Ukraine. Significant part of the MPs, more than 50 persons, went to Moscow to resolve issues of the new union agreement and other things there. Could those things be compared? Everyone understood that the interests of Ukraine, its future, were decided here in Kyiv, not in Moscow.
However, the peak of the protest movement was the Revolution on Granite, a protest organized by pro-Ukrainian Soviet youth.
On October the 2nd, 1918, more than 100 students from Kyiv and Lviv went to the present Independence Square, then the October Revolution Square, for strike. The action lasted 16 days and caused a huge public outcry. It led to resignation of the head of the Council of Ministers of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, Vitaly Masol.
The last action that pushed Ukraine to leave the Soviet Union was the State Emergency Committee's putsch in Moscow. On August 19, 1991, a group of conservative-minded top Communist Party leaders attempted a coup d'etat. Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev was arrested and troops were brought to Moscow.
Вскочил в самолет, 28 рублей до сих пор помню.
I remember as now I spent 28 Soviet rubles for ticket from Lviv to Moscow. 2 hours I came there. And there the putsch take place. Tanks were gathering around Moscow. On my way from Vnukovo airport, I saw the army columns, planes and buses, everything. I came to the center of Moscow. No one was blocking the way. There I made napalm, a mixed gasoline with glycerin, near the 6th entrance of the Supreme Council of Russia.
On August 22, 1991, it became clear that the State Emergency Committee putsch has failed. The Communist Party of the Soviet Union was banned. 2 days later, the Parliament of Ukraine gathered for an extraordinary meeting. In the evening of the same day, the act of the Proclamation of Independence of Ukraine was signed, and Ukraine started writing a new page in its history. Reported by Vadim Kramer and Danilo Kobza, UATV News.
During the extraordinary meeting dedicated to the Independence Day of Ukraine, the Parliament has approved in the first reading the presidential bill on the greater state emblem of Ukraine. A total of 257 MPs voted for such a decision. The bill is set to finally approve the greater coat of arms as foreseen by the Constitution of Ukraine. Therefore, Ukraine seeks to join several countries that have two national emblems, with one serving as a kind of visual shorthand for a more elaborate greater symbol of statehood. Assistance from the International Monetary Fund to Ukraine, $2.7 billion were transferred to the account of the National Bank of Ukraine on August 23rd. The assistance is free of charge. The IMF allocates these funds to all member countries of the Fund for Economic Recovery after the corona crisis. In September, the Ukrainian government will decide how to distribute the money. The third flight from Kabul landed at the Boryspil airport on August 23rd. This plane has evacuated not only citizens of Ukraine but also foreigners, including journalists from well-known world media. However, 50 more Ukrainians remaining in the Taliban-captured Afghanistan are waiting for help. More details in the following report.
The landing time of this flight was postponed 3 times due to aggravation of the situation in Kabul. The plane could not take off on time. This is the third flight that evacuated to Ukraine people from the country captured by the Taliban. There are not only rescued Ukrainians on board, but also journalists from Radio Liberty, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal and USA Today. In total, 98 people. About half of them are Ukrainians.
We have liberated probably the largest number of citizens of Ukraine from the very beginning of our evacuation flights. All this time we have been in touch with our international partners as well.
At the moment, 50 more Ukrainians are waiting in Afghanistan to get back home. The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry promises that everyone who hopes for it will be taken out of Afghanistan with the help of international partners.
We are confident that we will be able to evacuate all our citizens and all of them will soon stay in a safe place. First of all, it is another military board. The second option is the flight of another civilian charter flight, which will be sent to Kabul or another Afghan airport from the territory of one of the neighboring countries. The third is to use the aircraft that will fly under the flag of our international partners.
This is the third flight evacuating our citizens and foreigners from Afghanistan. The first plane evacuated 8 Ukrainians and more than 70 foreigners in the night of the 16th of August. Then the second plane was ready to take off, but due to security issues it stayed at the airport for a week. The second evacuation flight landed on Sunday, the 22nd of August. 83 people were brought to Ukraine, including 31 Ukrainians. Reported by Nick Starkov, Inna Nasonenko, UATV News.
That's all for this hour. More updates on our official website, YouTube, Twitter and Facebook pages. Thank you for staying with the UATV channel. Goodbye.